How's it going, everyone? So a clip has been in circulation today. This clip is about Alan Lazard, basically him speculating on whether or not Aaron Rodgers will be back in Green Bay next year, and primarily whether or not himself, he will be back in Green Bay in 2023. This is right after the Lions lost, so of course emotions are running high, but nonetheless, let's roll the clip and then I'll give my thoughts on it.
This will obviously be a difficult offseason. Do you expect 12 to be back in the fold next year?
I don't fucking know, shit. I don't know where I'm gonna be at. I can't worry about somebody else.
Have you done a lot of reflecting about that when you left the field tonight?
You know, definitely going into the game, I kind of had a realization that my first game here and potentially my last game, which it is, was going to be versus the Lions at home. So, you know, I took just a few moments just to kind of soak it all in and just like pat myself on the back, I guess, and just be thankful for this opportunity and this experience to be here for 4+ years now, and just to see the growth that I've made, not only on the field, but more so off the field, and becoming into my own and everything. And just, you know, I feel like a lot of times throughout my career, especially early on, it could have gone a lot differently, but I'm still here now, and I'm just thankful for that.
Yeah, so that's definitely a pretty big statement by Alan Lazard. First and foremost, pretty much just brushing off the entire Aaron Rodgers question, which I understand. He's got to worry about himself. He is an impending free agent after signing the second-round tender last year, so I get it. He's not that much worried about what Aaron Rodgers is doing right now. He's trying to figure out, you know, what he's going to be doing in the offseason, so I understand that part. But he definitely seems really annoyed by something. Obviously, the Packers just lost. They had a horrible season. They went 8-9. They just got kicked out of the playoffs, so I would assume he's definitely angry, you know, in his locker room, and he's not in the highest emotions at this point. But then basically to say, you know, my first game in Green Bay was against Detroit, and potentially my last game in Green Bay was against Detroit, and then to follow that up with which it is. I think that's a little crazy for him to just outright say that this is his last game in the green and gold. Maybe he really just wants nothing more to do with the Green Bay Packers. We saw during the offseason when the Packers originally gave Alan Lazard that second round tender, considering he was a restricted free agent, it took him a very, very long time to sign that deal. And I think it was to do with the Packers not extending him to a long-term extension. And that's what Alan Lazard wanted. So he likely was annoyed at the front office since the start of that. And then to top on this horrible season, you know, where he didn't really put up that much numbers when he was the number one wide receiver. I mean, we're going through the entire offseason after losing Davante Adams, and you're going, okay, Alan Lazard is going to be the number one wide receiver. Sure, they drafted Watson, they drafted Dobbs and Torrey, but Lazard is that true number one wide receiver going into the season, and he simply did not produce as one. So if he simply wants to just leave Green Bay, maybe take his talents elsewhere and see if another team wants to pay him wide receiver 2, wide receiver 1 money, which I think would be insane, that's likely what he wants. Now, Alan Lazard didn't have an awful season. He actually had his best season as an NFL player, but when you consider the circumstances, like I said earlier, you know, he was thrown into that number one wide receiver spot, and we all had very, very high hopes for him. He didn't really wow you. He had 60 total receptions for 788 yards and 6 touchdowns. He actually had 100 targets. That's the first time in his career. He had the most receptions in his career, the most yards in his career, 2 less touchdowns from last year. So yeah, it was his best year as a pro, but like I said, it just doesn't amount up to what you expected from him. The fact is the Green Bay Packers didn't have a single wide receiver over 800 yards. Alan Lazard was the most receiving yards in the wide receiver room with 788. And don't get me wrong, I love Alan Lazard and what he's done for this offense. He does all the dirty work. Every time there's a run play, he's out there blocking, and he's doing an excellent job at it. It seems like a lot of the times, every time the Packers are running to the outside, whether that's a shotgun toss or just a stretch run in general, it's to Alan Lazard's side, and he's holding that edge. Him and Mercedes Lewis are excellent blockers for being a wide receiver and a tight end, and I would want that back in the Green Bay offense, but just based off of what he said in this, that's not looking likely. And considering Lazard is an impending free agent, I definitely see him testing free agency to see maybe if he can get, you know, a good contract from another team, because he does deserve it. I mean, climbing all the way up from an undrafted free agent, Jacksonville Jaguars in 2018, he definitely does deserve a payday. It's just I don't see the Packers paying it, nor would I agree with the Packers paying an absurd amount or a multi-year extension for Alan Lazard, who's 28 years old at this point. As I said, last year he was signed under that second round tender and his cap hit was just under $4 million, 3.986 to be exact. But if Allen Lazard comes out and says, okay, I want to be a $10 million per year wide receiver, that's what MVS got over in Kansas City. And even then, I didn't think the Packers should re-sign MVS. And that's the same thing here. If Allen Lazard wants over $10 million per year, I just don't think the Packers will pay it, and I wouldn't either. They now know what they have in Christian Watson. He can be a true number one wide receiver, that deep threat they've needed in this offense. Romeo Doubs showed a lot of flashes, had a rough back end of the year when he came back from his high ankle sprain, but he's definitely showed his promise as well. Even Samori Toure has shown some good promise, even during the regular season when he's had to come in and play some snaps. He even had some snaps in the game on Sunday as well. So those three young wide receivers, on top of this whole offseason, they could potentially draft wide receivers, trade for a wide receiver, or sign a free agent. But yeah, I just wouldn't want to see the Packers pay $10 million for Allen Lazard, and that's the type of money, Curtis Samuel, Tyler Boyd, Devontae Parker, Corey Davis is making right now. But it'll be interesting to see what happens. It seems like Allen Lazard is already on his way out, probably already packed his locker. And will likely test free agency, and a team probably will give him upwards of 8, 9, 10, maybe even $11 million per year. But I want to hear your thoughts down in the comments below. What do you think of this entire situation? Do you think the Packers should try to re-sign Allen Lazard? What would be the yearly amount that you think would be a fair deal for Allen Lazard? I'm thinking right around like 6 or 7 million personally. And I know I'm not trying to discredit Allen Lazard because, like I said, this dude does all the dirty work, and that's probably why he's not going to get paid that much, because he's not a stat sheet wide receiver. And that's just why I don't think he'll get paid too much. But that about does it for this video. I'll catch you on the next one. Thanks for watching, and as always, go Pack Go.